Welcome to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Going to be talking to historian Liam Atchison, professor, Ph.D. from K-State, but I've known Liam a long time. Had him on the show. A number of you probably have seen Liam on. We've talked about a lot of things. But I want to talk about the rapture today. And people are going, rapture? What are you talking about? But there's been so much going on out there regarding since Charlie Kirk's assassination. And a lot of people seem to be looking for spiritual things. And I've seen a lot of things on various social media platforms, and I want to get Liam's perspective. So Liam, welcome to Open Range.
Nice to be back.
So Liam, before we get started, you and I did a show recently where we talked about Peter Thiel, and he's, started PayPal worth $20 billion, has Palantir and all that stuff. And he's doing these series of things on the Antichrist. And there's this thing called Act 17, which has to do with technology and social media, tying things together related to how technology plays into the Christian faith. And what I think is of interest is Peter Thiel is that all things says he's a very devout, committed Christian. And I don't know what that all means in this world we're in, where everybody has the new definitions. They redefine words every day. But he's doing these series of talks on the Antichrist. So Antichrist, is a whole nother subject. But today we're going to talk about the rapture, but it's still dealing with Christian end times where people are stressed out, and I tell the story when I was a young kid in a little town called McKinsey, about 100 people, the Jehovah's Witness came through, and they told all this fire and brimstone, the world's coming in, there's going to be earthquakes, and people are going to come with guns and get you. And I remember being a little 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, I was terrified for years over that. And but as Christians, and you being a historian and a Christian believer, and we can talk about that a little bit, we have in previous shows. It's a long introduction to get to the rapture. So what in the world, I know it, but for our viewers out there, I have no idea what we're talking about. Can you give me the 3-4 minute, what is the rapture that we're seeing? Because it's all over social media now.
Yeah. Well, the rapture is essentially the coming of the Lord for the church, coming of Jesus for the church. It's a part of what the New Testament calls the first resurrection. So the rapture is not just for people who are alive when Jesus comes back, but the Bible says that the bodies of those who have died before are going to be raised, because that's what resurrection is. There has to be a body to be a resurrection, and they'll be caught up. Those bodies will be caught up to be put back together, if that's what you want to say, with the immaterial part. That is, that we believe that when you die, your body's put in the grave, but that's not you, because it's without the immaterial part, the soul or the spirit, or sometimes people put two compartments there, the soul and the spirit. And so the rapture is Jesus returns for the church. He's returning for there are people who are alive who are going to be caught up together in the air with the bodies of those who have already died, who are being resurrected. And there is a late Christian teacher who used to say it's the most preposterous thing that Christians believe. And he uses a great quote from Richard Feynman. You know who Richard Feynman was?
I do not. I don't recall the name. I've heard of it, but I couldn't. My wife was here. She'd give me all the details, but she's not. So I'll have to defer to you.
Richard Feynman was a professor at Caltech. He is he got a Nobel Prize for his work in developing quantum physics. And he's considered like a genius. He's like put in the same categories. We think of Einstein as a genius. You could say Richard Feynman is a genius, but he's a little more likable genius because he's kind of quirky too. Anyway, here's what he said about quantum physics. And I know you're talking about the rapture, Liam, but this is quantum physics. He says, I think it's safe to say that no one understands quantum mechanics. In fact, it is often stated of all the theories proposed in this century, the silliest is quantum theory. Some say that the only thing quantum theory has going for it, in fact, is that it is unquestionably correct. Okay, so I love
All
that
right,
quote.
you better unwrap that one for me. That just
Okay,
kind of got me. That was a
well,
twist at the end I wasn't ready for.
yeah. Quantum physics is it. When I was at the university, I took physics from a traditional physicist, and he ranted on quantum physics, how crazy it was. It couldn't be true. Well, now majority of physicists believe in quantum physics, and Richard Feynman is one of the reasons why they do, because of his research and his work. So what he's saying is, it is so crazy. No one thought it is unbelievable. But the thing that quantum physics, he said, had going for it was, it may sound crazy, but it's the way it is. And if you read, for evangelicals who read the Bible plainly and allow it to speak for itself, they believe that's what the Bible says. And you think it's crazy? So do I. I think it's crazy too, but that's what the Bible teaches. And the Bible teaches other things that Christians take on faith, things like the virgin birth. That's a mind bender too. But that's the nature of faith. God can do anything he wants, and this is how he's going to do it. The passages that talk about it are First Thessalonians 4, verses 13 through 18. And then in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 50 through 54, are the clearest expressions of how that resurrection takes place, that is the rapture.
Explain that to us then. So take that passage, as long as we're there, take that passage, and so the viewer out there, they probably hear of the second coming, of Jesus coming, the second coming. Right. And he came the first time and he was resurrected. The Christian faith teaches that. Right. Not all churches fall in line. Most churches believe there will be a second coming, but not all of them understand the concept of the rapture. Can you differentiate that a little bit? We only have a few minutes, and maybe we'll have to pick that up in the next segment, but at least give us a passage out of 1 Corinthians that you're referring to, which is a New Testament book written by the Apostle Paul.
Well, how about, I'll do the 1 Thessalonians, since I have my Bible open. I'll be a little faster.
Perfect.
It says, now we don't want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about those who are asleep. That's a euphemism talking about the people who've died. So that you will not grieve like the rest who have no hope. Which means he's using this passage for an encouragement to them, because they've had loved ones who died, and they believe that they died, they're going to miss out on all the fun when Jesus comes back. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, so we also believe that God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep as Christians. So what it means is that he's saying that those who have died, they're going to be part of it. Their bodies are going to be raised as well. And he says, for the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a shout of command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. There it is. Dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will suddenly be caught up. Now remember those two words, caught up, together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will always be with the Lord. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. So if you read the Bible, I mean, what can you make that mean? Well, people don't like it, and so they try to make it mean something. But it's pretty plain what it's saying there. Now, there's two words, caught up. In the Latin version of the Bible, the word there for being caught up or seized is where we get our word rapture from. It's rapiere, I think, is the word. So our word rapture comes from that word, and that's where the word comes from. So you'll see some people like, who's the guy who, when Trump did the Apprentice show, he had that country singer who wore the cowboy hat, he's on now. I saw a clip of him claiming, they made that up. The rapture's not in the Bible. Well, that's the silliest thing you could possibly say, because that is a biblical term. It's exactly where the term rapture comes from, that passage that I just read. And the word occurs in other places in the New Testament too, but not in connection with the resurrection and the participation of living believers who are caught up. Now, they say, well, what about the coming of Christ and Armageddon and all of that stuff? Well, you have to put that together in biblical prophecy. There's a lot of things going on. One is, that's where the church is taken out because God has to keep his promises in the Old Testament to Israel. And so then what happens is, after the church is taken out, begins the time of tribulation. And that's a time when Satan is attempting to set up his kingdom, which is what he's always wanted. And he hates the Jews and he hates Israel. And that will be a time when Christians believe, the Christians who believe in the rapture believe that God will keep his promises to Israel and that many of them will turn to Jesus as Messiah, and that this is a way that God is going to bring about his promises to restore the kingdom to Israel, which will occur finally when Jesus appears at Armageddon, which, by the way, is no battle. If you're imagining, if you're imagining Lord of the Rings at the end, the last fight when the tower falls, when Mordor falls, it's not going to be a battle like that. It's going to be Jesus shows up, and that's it.
You know what? We're going to leave it with that. We're going to go to the break, and we come back. I want to dig in that a little bit further because there's all these misconceptions. They scare the daylights out of people.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we've been talking to historian Liam Atchison. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Stay tuned. We'll be right back because we're going to talk about Armageddon.
Stop out to our facility, Highway 22 South. Let us build a truck for you.
Hello and welcome to the MHA Interpretive Center. It's the perfect stop along the Lewis and Clark Trail and the cultural hub of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. Nestled along the shores of Lake Sagagawea in Newtown, North Dakota, 1 mile west of the Four Bears Casino. You can enjoy amphitheater performances, art exhibitions, and educational workshops utilizing our Living Cultural Center. Enjoy some coffee, browse our gift shop, and learn about the original people of this land. Learn more at mhanation.com/interpretive center.
Welcome to Arrowhead Cleaners. Newly renovated, modernized, and ready to make your cleaning needs hassle-free. From commercial and residential wash and fold laundry services to the latest in professional dry cleaning techniques, we are dedicated to your unique needs, offering alterations, fabrications, and even custom hat making. So whether you're a busy professional, a family on the go, or even a rodeo champion, Arrowhead Cleaners is here to take your things from messed up to dressed up. Now celebrating our 64th year in Arrowhead Plaza.
Home on the Range offers a nurturing place for teens who may have just come from an unsafe or traumatic environment. Here, they receive therapy and education services centered around animals, and the surrounding nature provides opportunities for work, fun, and healing. Life skills learned at Home on the Range are carried with residents when they return to the community with new talents and a greater appreciation for themselves and others.
Are you dealing with arthritis, nerve and back pain, dry skin, or superficial wounds, but found no relief? Give Stewart's Natural Health a try. For over 4 decades, Stewart's Natural Health has been helping people and animals with herbal and natural oil lotions, ointments, and creams with a mission to help you relieve pain and feel your best using the power of nature. Discover the safe, drug-free solution to your pain, guaranteed or your money back. Visit stewartsnatural.health today.
West River Equipment of Mandan is here to help you maintain peak productivity in your operation. As an authorized dealer for many high-quality equipment lines, we have the new and used equipment it takes to make your farming, ranching, or construction operation profitable and efficient. West River Equipment also has the parts on hand and the experienced technicians in our shop to get your equipment back in action fast. Find what you need at West River Equipment on Old Red Trail in Mandan.
Welcome back to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth, talking to historian Liam Atchison about the rapture. But before we went to the break, Liam started talking about Armageddon. So, Liam, we always hear about Armageddon, and there's so many misconceptions, apparently, because you're saying it's not going to be like this big battle. But there seems to be things. I mean, I've read my Bible a few times, and you get into the book of Revelation, you see all these gory things taking place. I mean, how do you separate Armageddon from the rapture, the second coming, and tribulation? Well, I mean, that's a lot of stuff happening there.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening. Well, there are different views on the rapture. I'll tell you there are 4 different views of the rapture. I won't get into that. That's for another time. But the largest segment of Christians who study the rapture hold to one of those views, and that view says that the church is the church has a beginning and the church has an ending. The church began on the day of Pentecost, and the church ends when God removes the church at the first stage of Jesus' return. When he comes in the air, he doesn't come to earth, comes in the air, and he meets living believers and the resurrection of dead believers. And then they go to their own what's called the Bema judgment. That's not in Revelation. Neither is the rapture. Okay, those things happened before. And they also have something called the marriage supper of the Lamb, which is alluded to in Revelation. But the believers are off the scene. And in Revelation, the last time that we see believers is in chapters 2 and 3 when he's speaking to the churches of Asia Minor. And then John begins to relate the vision that he has after chapter 3. And this is a vision of how, answering the question, how is God going to keep his promises to Israel and restore the kingdom? And he says he's going to do it through a time that is called in the Old Testament the time of Jacob's trouble, or a time when God has to take the world through a series of judgments for long history of turning against him. And that culminates at the end of 7 years. It's a 7-year period of time. And I'm simplifying a lot of this, Gary, but basically the church is gone. Then there's a 7-year period of time. Now you got to divide that stuff up. I'm just trying to simplify here. At the end of the 7 years is the so-called battle of Armageddon. And this is where the man of sin, the beast, the Antichrist, the person who is Satan's emissary on earth, who is trying to grab control of the entire world, gathers armies from all over the world for this last-ditch, ridiculous, hopeless effort to oppose God and what God is trying to do to exalt humanity in its rebellion against God. And so they gather all of these armies on this plain of Megiddo, which is northwest of Jerusalem. It's in the Middle East. And then Jesus comes back, and as soon as he appears, it's over. Because he's God. He doesn't have to say, boy, this is going to be a tough battle out there, guys. Get your sword sharpened. And he comes with hosts of angels, and he comes theoretically with believers too in that army. But there's no fighting God. It's the Battle of Armageddon. If you read carefully, the battle is no battle at all. It's done. That God just takes care of those who oppose him in short order. And then following Armageddon is the establishment of the kingdom that has been promised. And Jesus is the Messiah, the King. And we see the 12 apostles are given positions of governance over the 12 tribes of Israel. Israel's the font of the nations, and it's an interesting time because and then there are people.
So this rapture occurs. You have the 7-year tribulation. So Christians are taken out. Hopefully there's millions. There should be anyway. We hope so. They get taken out of the world. 7-year tribulation period you refer to. And then there's this millennial kingdom. So if I'm raptured out of here, and am I reigning that 1,000 years, or am I somewhere else hanging out while this earth in this millennial kingdom. What about these Christians that have been raptured out of the world? What is the teaching, mainline or, related to those millions of people taken out via the rapture, and also those that were dead, that were brought to life at, pre-rapture of those on the earth? Where are those people all at during this millennial kingdom?
During the millennial kingdom, they're living. They're never going to die. Obviously, they are present on the earth and helping out. They're present in heaven. Heaven's a temporary place. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth eventually after the kingdom. The kingdom never ends. And so you remember that thing in Star Wars where you go into that, I always like to say, you go into that bar and you got all those different kinds of aliens hanging out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's one of my
That's what it'll be like.
There'll
be people there'll be Old Testament, there'll be Old Testament saints who anticipated the Messiah and believed. There'll be people who died in the church. There'll be people who were never died, but they were given glorified bodies like those who were resurrected. And there'll be people who are building families and having children just like they were before. And that'll continue throughout the millennium on the earth. And then after the 1,000 years, Satan is going to be thrown into the abyss. Satan's bound during that 1,000 years, according to those Christians who believe this. There are some Christians who don't believe this. There are various reasons why they might do that in their traditions, but yeah, they're going to be the idea is that Christians are going to be alive, and they're going to be helping out in any way, any matter of service that God assigns them, and having a great time being part of what God is doing in his program. So let me just say this about fear. Let me say this about fear. No reason to be afraid. Rapture is not a reason to be afraid. Not a reason to worry about your dogs or animals or cats. We love our dogs too, and we kid around and say, well, I'm going to grab for Emma, that's our dog. I'm going to grab her if the rapture happens and see if I can sneak her into heaven. That's just playing around. That's not even popular theology. That's just kidding around. There's nothing to be afraid of. And a lot of times there is hysteria about it because there's a difference between what we would call a legitimate exegetical theology, where you're studying the word and seeing what it's actually saying. And there's kind of a speculative popular theology that you'll see on TikTok and on social media, where people are panicking or saying outlandish things. And don't be afraid of those kinds of things. Find somebody who really, has studied this and knows what they're talking about, and they can explain it to you. And I might be one of those people if I had enough time to unwrap all of this. Last year I did a Bible study for a large group of people here on the book of Revelation. It took us a year and a half to get through it. That's how much detail there is. So it takes a little bit of time, but that's what makes it fun too. Prophecy is so much fun. It's nothing to be afraid of. And it's exciting to, even think about what God's going to do, but you have to stick to the text as well.
So, Liam, we only have a couple of minutes. We're going to go to break. We're going to come back. And when we come back, I'm going to say, I want you to dig in. You say, well, people shouldn't be afraid, but maybe I'm a skeptic. Maybe I'm not a Christian. Maybe I go to church. Maybe my mainline church doesn't teach that. So I'm going to give you a chance to address that when we go to the segment. But I want to give you about a minute and a half before the break just to talk about Israel, because there's so much going on right now. And you talk about restoration of Israel. Give us the 1 minute on that, because Trump's going to, we're going to get Hamas straightened out. We're going to take back Gaza, and it's going to get straightened out. Everybody's going to be happy. But they seem to be fighting day and night over there in the Middle East.
Yeah,
that's relevant, isn't it?
It is. I don't think it's going to stop. I think it's right to be as supportive of Israel as we can be, knowing that this is not an Israel that believes Jesus is the Messiah. So here's the main point: that God made promises to Israel in the Old Testament, and either he's going to keep those promises to Israel, as he said, that's to the Jewish people, Or there are some Christians, and we'll get into this in the next segment, who may say, well, no, Israel's been replaced by the church. I think that's a pretty sketchy view. And I think that that's led to other kinds of probably leads to a little bit of it doesn't it leads to bad things. And just because it leads to bad things doesn't mean that those who hold those things, but it leads to anti-Semitism, and it leads to things like apartheid. And it's better to see that God is going to, if you approach the Bible in a plain way, some people call that literal, but that's misunderstood too. If you come in a plain way and you believe it, just let it speak for what it's saying. Keep it in context. Understand the history and the context of what's being saying, but let it speak. It's not speaking in what would you say? Strange, cryptic ways that have some different meaning than what they're saying. But if you allow it to speak just as in terms of what it's saying, then God made promises to Israel that have to be kept. And there's a large group of Christians who believe that, and that God loves Israel, and that he is going to keep his promises to them. And that's the violence toward them is not going to change. We're going to see it from here on out. In fact, there'll be a last-ditch effort, according to prophecy, to try to wipe out Jews once and for all. And God's not going to allow it to happen. And God's in control. There's no reason to be afraid, is there?
All right. Well, when we come back to the break, I want to dig into that a little bit further. So we've been talking to Professor historian Liam Atchison. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Base Flug Trailers of Dickinson is a family-owned dealer with expert staff that know their products front to back. We stock over 150 units of all types and can custom order a trailer with the unique features and capabilities you require for brands you can trust. Our experienced service team is the reason we're also the best place to have your trailer customized or repaired. Count on Base Flug Trailers of Dickinson to keep you hauling.
Are you looking for something special or one of a kind? At Bassett Motors, we can help you find exactly what you want.
Come on in and experience how small-town hospitality and personal service can make car buying a pleasure.
We know interest rates are important to you. We have multiple lenders to negotiate your lowest payment.
Visit us on Highway 281 in Carrington, North Dakota, and online at BassettMotors.com. Bassett Motors, where our customers send their friends.
Yeah, U.S. Cattlemen is a member organization that each member has a vote in anything we do with policy. We're representing the independent cattleman or the cow-calf guy or an independent feeder or whatever. We like to support the independent producer. We're talking about mandatory ID, we're talking about cool, we're talking about all the legislation that's going to be coming down with the new administration. There's going to be lots of moving and shaking, so always check us out at our website, uscattleman.org.
I'm $27,000 in credit card debt.
Okay.
You have to radically do something different, because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting.
Now's not the time to be doing math. The time to be doing math was when we didn't go into $200,000 of debt.
If you are freaked out and you're stuck in these debt payments and you think it has to be a part of your life, it doesn't.
We are Ladies of Another View. Join us every weekday morning at 9 o'clock a.m. as we discuss the big topics from North Dakota, the nation, and around the world.
We chat with everyone from celebrities and medical professionals to politicians, local business owners, and neighbors about the topics and stories that affect all of us.
We are unscripted and uncensored real news from real people. So join us every weekday morning for Ladies of Another View on Beck.
Welcome back to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth, talking to historian Liam Atchison about the rapture, talking about the church, talking about we don't have to be afraid. But Liam, just briefly, give us a sense. I mean, not all churches teach this rapture thing that you're talking about, where the Christians are taken out of the world, and hopefully there'll be millions of them. There should be 1 billion of them by Christian standard when you talk around the world, but that's probably not going to happen. So that being said, where are the mainline churches at with this? Who are there? Just a small minority, quirky people like Gary and Liam that actually believe this teaching? What do the mainlines deal with this?
I don't know. I read this article in Politico that says that just a small slice of Christians. How do they know that? I don't know. I don't know what people think. It sure seems like there are a lot of Christians who believe it. I think there's a lot of static, though. I think there's a lot of confusion. There's some Christians now who don't believe it, who think that who are kind of who believe that we have to bring in the kingdom by fixing the earth, by bringing back the Old Testament laws, for example, and having those laws made. So there's a group of people out there who are doing that, and it's confusing because when you hear from them, it sounds like prophecy too, and you might throw them all in the same bucket. Then you mentioned the mainline people who've been influenced by liberal theology, or we might call progressive theology, if that's what you prefer. Which, just like in the political sense, theology has been affected and perhaps corrupted by liberal theology that began in Germany in the late 19th century and captured the mainline denominations. And what happened is in the 1920s and 30s, the people who were the old school people we now call evangelicals, left those denominations in huge numbers. And those denominations are still declining to this day, but they held all the property. So they have these wonderful churches. We used to call them limestone sepulchers when I was in college. We'd pass this church, that one of those mainline denomination churches made out of white limestone in that college town. And, they'd have maybe 20 or 30 people on a Sunday. Whereas over here in this storefront, there's an evangelical church that's packed out with 600 people that are, packed in tightly in this storefront. But, you think, well, that one has more credibility because they've got a building with a steeple, and they don't have as much credibility as these people over here. So I don't know where the mainline churches, I would guess, by and large, are saying, well, this is ridiculous. We don't pay any attention to any of this because we don't believe the Bible anyway. I mean, they would say, well, we believe the Bible's a great book and it's very inspirational, but we don't really take it as seriously as they do. So there's the difference. See, if you take the Bible seriously and you have a plain interpretation, you're going to let it speak for itself. If you say, I don't believe that stuff, it's, there's some wisdom in the Bible, but it's written from a male perspective, and it's, full of contradictions, and it's inconsistent. And besides, these passages like this guy is quoting from 1 Thessalonians and 1 Corinthians, Paul didn't really write those. They're just, somebody just claimed to be Paul and wrote them and made it up. So those are the kinds of, and they'll have scholars who will get behind that and say, yeah, this is pseudepigraphal, which means a fancy term for saying, yeah, it claims to be written by Paul, but he didn't really write. He didn't write 1 Timothy, and he didn't write 1 Thessalonians, and he didn't write all of these other things, and somebody else later stuck that in. So they have this way of kind of denying the Bible. So I wouldn't think that many of the mainline Protestant churches would put much credence in any of this. And to them, they might be really scared. They think people are losing their minds because they actually believe this kind of stuff like you and I believe.
So Liam, for the average viewer out there, never doesn't pick up their Bible. In fact, it's this big, nice one they got for when they baptized their first child, or their parents had it sitting on the shelf for decorations.
Right.
That's how many people are today that would say they're Christians. If you were to say to someone out there, hey, pick up your Bible or find a Bible and read it and start somewhere, I mean, what would you tell someone? I mean, you're a professor that has taught, and you're a Bible teacher, you're a historian. Where would you tell the average viewer out there that has no idea what we're talking about, says, I think I'm going to look into it. I mean, you can go Google it and find a bunch of stuff, but you might find a lot of bad stuff that's not even in the Bible, which is true for
You could
AI.
try to do it on chat box.
Yeah.
Chat box might tell you.
So tell me about it in the last 4 or 5 minutes. What someone should do.
Yeah.
Should they get that dusty Bible off the shelf that has all those pictures and it's about this thick, and start in Genesis and try to read it to the end, or what would you recommend?
Well, what I recommend you would do is if you're going to read the Bible, there are people who have read the Bible for themselves and have come to understand it, so that they get the picture and understand what the Bible talks about as the gospel, the good news about Jesus Christ. They exercise faith and they've become believers. But in our day and age, it's pretty difficult. We have a difficult time reading properly. You've probably seen this yourself, where people will read a newspaper account and they get totally different ideas from that newspaper account as to what's being said. It's because we've come to a place in our own society where people don't know how to read anymore. And that sounds funny, but we read contextually. We read, and we have to have a historical background. So I would say, if you're going to read, begin with the book of John in the New Testament. But I have an even better idea. And that is, do you know somebody who says that they understand the gospel and know Jesus? Do you know a church down the street where you see people going that is, you would call it an evangelical church? You see an evangelical church where there are people. You don't even have to go there necessarily, but it would not be a bad idea. Find somebody that you know who claims to be a Christian and ask them, I want to get into reading the Bible. Somebody said I should start with the book of John. Could you help me as I read through this to understand what's being read? And that, Gary, that's kind of the approach that in the book of Acts, the Ethiopian eunuch was one of the first converts to the Christian faith after the day of Pentecost. And the Ethiopian eunuch was reading from a scroll of the Old Testament, and Philip, the evangelist, came up to him and said, do you understand what you're reading? And he basically says, no. And Philip helps him understand what it says, and then he gets it. And that's his way of, understanding what the message is about. So my recommendation is, you should get a Bible, and you don't have to get a King James. You can get one that's in English that you can really understand, that's 21st century English. Begin reading the book of John, but much better than that, instead of trying to strike out on your own, because it's difficult, even with that simple book of John, to know exactly what it means. Find somebody who knows Jesus, or claims to know Jesus, and believes the Bible and can help explain it to you. Because it's so wonderful to really be able to read the Bible and understand it. Because when you get all this other static and all this fear and things about, oh, it's violent, oh, it's anti-woman, oh, it's this and that, you actually read the Word of God for yourself, and you see it's very different than the way those who don't know it tend to picture it in the world.
I think that's really relevant, because so often, if you have no context, I had some international people that I've done some consulting with, and they weren't Christians. They were of an Eastern religion background, and they didn't really understand even the concept of Jesus, that he was God, never heard that he was resurrected. And but they were well educated and smart, but their society just never had it. And so I really found myself challenged when he started quizzing me about the Catholic Church versus, what's Jesus. And then I started talking about Abraham and, David, and they look at me like, what are you talking about? So sometimes, I mean, even in America, as weird as it is, you can really have that same conversation even with the neighbor down the street, can't you?
Oh, Oh yeah, and I've had conversations like that all the time. And especially what we're talking about, Book of Revelation, before people even read it, they've always heard about the Book of Revelation, because of how about all those apocalypse movies and things. So it's like, I'm afraid to read that book. It's hard to understand. You know what? The people who were in my Bible study said after a year, they said, this really isn't so hard to understand. And it isn't because you're so good at teaching it, Liam. That made me feel good. They just said that you pointed out that if you just allow it to speak for itself and understand a little bit about the historical context, you can really understand what it says for yourself. Now, there's some who are going to say, oh, the Chinese army builds, in Revelation, it says the Chinese army builds paper tanks and conquers Asia. That's nonsense. The Book of Revelation doesn't say that, and it doesn't give that kind of detail. It gives general ideas that say basically this: God's in control. He is the one who is he's going to vindicate his people, and he's going to bring these things to their accomplishment. And the God is good, and the story ends well, as Larry Crabb used to say. And I've never forgotten that quote. God is good, and the story ends well. And that's why we don't have to fear. If you want to oppose God, it's not only crazy, but it's a good reason to be afraid.
Well, Liam, I appreciate you coming on and helping put some clarity to the rapture. I know so often I've heard it 1,000 times. I don't know where it's at, but I know the Bible says it, and I'm thinking, I don't think so.
Yep.
Anyway, so Liam Atchison, historian, thank you for joining us today in Open Range talking about the rapture. We're going to have Dr. Jake Schmitz come back and give us a tip on healthy living. While we're here, we still got to live well. So Liam Atchison, thanks for joining us today in Open Range.
Hey y'all, it's Trent on the loose. I want to tell you, Lady Blue and I, we got a lot of miles together, but you know what? You and I got a lot of miles together as well. And all I want to do is bring to you the information on how we maintain a domestic supply of food and fuel for future generations. So I'm going to continue to travel the world and unearth the stories that make it possible that we can live in a free United States of America.
Welcome to Arrowhead Cleaners. Newly renovated, modernized, and ready to make your cleaning needs hassle-free. From commercial and residential wash and fold laundry services to the latest in professional dry cleaning techniques, we are dedicated to your unique needs, offering alterations, fabrications, and even custom hat making. So whether you're a busy professional, a family on the go, or even a rodeo champion, Arrowhead Cleaners is here to take your things from messed up to dressed up. Now celebrating our 64th year in Arrowhead Plaza. Are you dealing with arthritis, nerve and back pain, dry skin, or superficial wounds, but found no relief? Give Stewart's Natural Health a try. For over 4 decades, Stewart's Natural Health has been helping people and animals with herbal and natural oil lotions, ointments, and creams with a mission to help you relieve pain and feel your best using the power of nature. Discover the safe, drug-free solution to your pain, guaranteed or your money back. Visit stewartsnatural.health today.
West River Equipment of Mandan is here to help you maintain peak productivity in your operation. As an authorized dealer for many high-quality equipment lines, we have the new and used equipment it takes to make your farming, ranching, or construction operation profitable and efficient. West River Equipment also has the parts on hand and the experienced technicians in our shop to get your equipment back in action fast. Find what you need at West River Equipment on Old Red Trail in Mandan.
Ashley, North Dakota is where life moves a little slower, but never gets dull. From hunting, camping, and fishing to safe streets where kids can be kids, this is the best of small town living. And Ashley offers everything you need, from healthcare to hardware to countless ways to stay active. Here, we've invested in our future with major upgrades to roads, parks, and education. Whether you're here for the day or here for life, you'll find Ashley's where you ought to be.
Since 1980, Circle Sanitation has been providing exceptional waste hauling services to every customer, big or small. Whether you just need reliable weekly pickup, roll-off containers for major projects at home or the construction site, or your needs are somewhere in between, Circle Sanitation has you covered. We're a locally owned family business and currently seeking dependable men and women to add to our team. Wages are competitive and benefits comprehensive. Call us today or visit circlesanitation.com.
What's going on, everybody? Dr. Jake Schmitz back with another Freedom Health Talk on Open Range. This is part 2 of supplement recommendations. If you missed part 1, I know that you can go on the Open Range on Beck TV, the website. You can find. I have no idea when it played, no clue. That's up to Gary. So you can find it. It was really cool though, is that you can go back and rewatch old episodes of Open Range, and so I know they're there, and sometimes I do that. So it's a really cool resource that you can have, is go back and find those old episodes. So just food for thought. But this is part 2. In part 1, I talked about general health. I talked about energy, increasing energy, and brain health. So in this segment, I'm going to be talking about some other generalized baseline supplement recommendations. Specifically, as we go through this, I think, and I talked about this in part 1 a little bit, and so I'll replay just a tiny bit, but fuzzy targets don't get hit. And so it's important for your goal to be specific so that you know what you're working towards, right? So one of the things that I personally have been working towards in my health is fitness, and I've been working on muscle development, and and one of the things that I always do is brain health. Partly because I utilize my brain a lot. I know people that probably disagree with that, but I use my brain a lot. And so because of that, I want to make sure that my brain's functioning optimally. And so there are things for that. And I talked a little bit about that in the part 1 segment. So if brain health is something that you're concerned with, or how to, slow down the degeneration process, you can go catch some of that in part 1. So let's start off. We're going to talk about my favorite health topic is gut. So what are some generalized recommendations for the gut? And this is assuming you don't have a lot of problems. If you had some issues, or there's something wrong, like a Crohn's or colitis or IBS or whatever, or IBD, IBS, I would obviously give you different recommendations. But just hey, you know what? My gut's probably not where it needs to be. I want to improve my gut. Okay, so here's some recommendations. I would say start off, and I always say this is a prebiotic. So prebiotic is a very specifically formulated fiber, and it only feeds the good bacteria in your gut. So it doesn't feed any kind of gram-negative or pathogenic bacteria. It's only feeding the good guys. Now, again, that's a nuanced conversation. There's no such really thing as good or bad guys as it comes to this. But generally speaking, it's not feeding anything that's going to harm you. As opposed to if you just increase fiber, fiber feeds everything in there. Any kind of bacteria gets fed by fiber. So if you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria and you just eat more fiber, you're going to have more problems. Hopefully that makes sense. So I always start with prebiotic. Inside the umbrella of prebiotic, I would say you need FOS, F-O-S, which is generally going to be like something like inulin or chicory root, and GOS, G-O-S, and you can do 5 grams of each, so 10 grams a day. In fact, I've got mine right here that I take. I'll grab it later. I'll show you. I've showed you before, but FOS and GOS. If you have any questions on any of these recommendations, you're like, hey, I want to know what to take for blah, 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 there's my email. So you can just shoot me an email, and I'll gladly tell you what I would recommend for each specific type of these recommendations. So prebiotic first and foremost. The next one is sometimes I'd recommend a probiotic. I have so many people that I've seen do this wrong. Generally speaking, probiotics are a this for that, meaning I have this condition, so I will take that specific strain of probiotic. You don't really want to, and again, the research agrees with this, is you don't want to take I've got 65 strains at 100 billion CFU. You don't want to do that, which is why I would say, depending on your issue, I would say this strain, right? So if you say, hey, I took an antibiotic recently and I've got diarrhea now, well, I would say you need to take L-rhamnosus GG. If you said, hey, I've got, it doesn't matter, pick whatever condition, I would say, okay, well then take this, like Akkermansia, or I would generally say don't take acidophilus, but maybe a bifido breve. So depending on what that is, you take a specific probiotic for a short period of time to really help, kind of overcome that condition. But I don't always recommend a probiotic. I think it's something where people are really messing up other people's guts by making that recommendation. So just take that for what it is. The last one is like a short chain fatty acid, specifically butyrate. Butyrate is produced by the gut bacteria when it eats fiber or prebiotic. But supplementing with butyrate is also important for the colonocytes, the cells in your intestines, to help them repair. So again, if we're talking about just generalized advice, prebiotic, sometimes a probiotic, depending on the condition, and things like butyrate. There are other short chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate. There's like 20 of them, but butyrate's the most important one, in my opinion, and in research's opinion. So that's gut issues. Next one I'm going to talk about is something that I think we desperately need help with right now, especially in light of the chaos and insanity that's happening in the world, is stress and mental health help. I don't really want to go down that whole rabbit hole of what I really think on everything. That could be its own segment, and I just don't think people are ready to hear that yet. And so I'll kind of table that for now. But there are a lot of people that are having difficulties with stress, increased stress, and the ramifications of that as it affects their mental health, their sleep, etc., recovery, what so have you. So let's talk about this. I'm going to give you some recommendations. I'll explain why. Fish oil. Fish oil is super important for brain health. So that's just a must. You have to. Like, fish oil is extremely important. We don't get enough omega-3 fatty acids in our diet. We get too many omega-6 fatty acids in our diet, which are inflammatory. So we need to and fish oil is really good for cleaning things out, right? It's anti-inflammatory. It's going to help kind of remove gunk. It's going to clean up the vessels. It's extremely important for both cardiovascular and brain health. And again, there's studies on fish oil as it pertains to mental health. So fish oils are extremely easy. Nordic Naturals is the brand I generally recommend. You can get it pretty much anywhere. Super, super good. The next one I'm going to recommend are, especially if you're talking about stress, is adaptogens, right? You've probably heard of something called adaptogenic herbs. Again, if you have questions, we'll throw my email up again, but adaptogens are important to tamp down the stress response in the adrenal glands. So there are a couple of different brands that do this, but they're just like, I'm blanking right now, adaptogen, there were specific ones, like valerian root. I'm blanking on the one. Anyway, it'll come to me, but adaptogens are important. There's like 3 or 4 that are always kind of paired together in these supplements that really help reduce the impact that cortisol has, the stress hormone, on the rest of the body, right? So it helps people relax, which I think we need more of that right now. It's like, let's turn it down a couple notches. Right along with that recommendation, I would say, is magnesium. And magnesium is important for a couple of things. Magnesium does help us relax. It helps the muscles relax. It kind of takes the foot off the throttle, so to say. But then magnesium is important for producing most hormones, specifically the neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. So if we're talking about mental health, you cannot have mental health without the hormones that go along with it. And if you don't have magnesium, because magnesium is used for like 300 other things in the body that we know of. Some say it's like 600. Some sources say 600. So if you run out of magnesium, you're going to have a whole host of different problems, let alone mental health, right? And so magnesium, super easy. I would say 400 milligrams per day, magnesium glycinate, super simple. You just do that. It's going to actually help you calm down. It also helps with kids with like ADHD. So it's super, super important. And it's going to help produce the hormones that actually help overcome some of the stress issues. Amino acids, really along the same vein as what I just said with magnesium, is if you don't have the amino acid complexes, tryptophan, tyrosine specifically, you don't produce the hormones that help a person, have that rest and relax. So amino acids, which you get amino acids from protein, so you can either get an amino acid complex on its own or just increase your protein, whether you just eat some more chicken or you just take a protein powder. Like, that's fine too. Increasing protein is good for a lot of different things, but as it pertains to this, is going to help give you, it's like the building blocks, right? So you need the building blocks to build a house. If you don't have the wood and all, I'm not a builder, but if you don't have the nails and all these things, you can't actually build anything. So it doesn't matter how the plan looks. If you don't have the supply, you can't make it. Fair? The last one I want to talk about is something called creatine. Creatine has been shown at anywhere from 5 to 10 up to 20 grams per day, depending on your lifestyle. But I would just say, for those listening, probably 5 to 10 grams would be enough. Has been shown in studies that if you have a super stressful event, or you're in a situation like most people are right now, where I'm not sleeping, I'm super stressed, I wake up and I'm exhausted still, creatine has been shown that it can help you overcome that deficit. So even if, let's say, you lose sleep, right? Say I'm super stressed and I'm losing my sleep, creatine will actually help kind of, here's an example. For a while they were saying, if you take this pill, it'll stop you from having the hangover, even if you drink. I don't recommend that. I'm using that as the example because creatine will help even in the event that you're losing your sleep. You will still wake up feeling good or feeling not crappy because it helps with that. So creatine is extremely important. The more I read about it, the more excited I get, especially as it pertains to cognitive decline. Creatine is super awesome. And I take it every day, and I've been taking it for fitness, not realizing I'm like, oh, I'm going to add a little bit more. Because if you are working out a lot, you do need to get up to that 20 grams a day, because like your muscles, especially if you're working out, muscles will steal that creatine before your brain gets it. So you got to overcome a threshold, which again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you have questions, email me. The last one I want to talk about is, and it's going to be kind of a 2-for-1, because I think these are different, right? There's weight loss and then there's fitness. Okay. These are two separate things. But if you want, it's like, I want to lose weight. Oh, the best supplement is to fast. Supplement fasting. Stop eating. We got to lower the calorie count, right? So lower your calories, be complex so that we can make sure that we're utilizing blood sugar appropriately. Increase water, increase your sleep, increase your fiber. Simple. If you're trying to gain muscle, increase protein. You need a lot of protein because, again, it's called muscle protein synthesis. You need protein, creatine, nitric oxide. So those are, again, these are super simple. If you have any questions, you know what to do. Just hit me up. This has been Dr. Jake Schmitz with another Freedom Health Talk on Open Range. I love you guys. My goal is to help you get better and move the needle for your health. So keep thinking, keep on it. Until next time.
At the heart of every small town are the people that live there and the businesses that serve them. From sporting events to 4-H, Lions clubs to hospital foundations, Bassett Motors has worked for the past 23 years to make sure the heart of its area small towns continues to be the people. With over 15 employees, Bassett Motors prides itself on small town service with personal attention. Bassett Motors, where our customers send their friends.
Hi, I'm Scott Hennon, host of the What's on Your Mind program on Beck TV now. From Baker, Montana to St. Cloud, Minnesota, and everywhere in between, we're looking forward to having a conversation with you about what matters most. We're talking to newsmakers, from members of Congress to the state legislature, and most importantly, the good folks that make up the great state of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana. Every single day, you get a chance to tell us what's on your mind. And now you can watch What's on Your Mind live on Beck TV. Tune in 10 a.m. live for What's on Your Mind.
Hey y'all, it's Trent on the loose. Join me on the trip and unearth the stories on how we maintain a domestic supply of food and fuel for future generations of American citizens like our forefathers did.